Shabbat Shalom, family. It is good to be here. It's pretty warm in here. Is anyone too hot? We could turn the fans on. It may get hotter. We'll see. If you have your Bibles, let's get into the book of Leviticus, chapter 25. This Torah portion's title is Behar. It means on the mountain. We're going to look at some specific pieces in here today. Most of what this portion is about is rest of the land and then the Yovel or Jubilee. But I want to look at some specific pieces in here. Mr. Myers, here's your title, How You Love a Brother. So we're going to jump Leviticus 25. We're going to pick up in verse 25. And we're going to start there. It says, when your brother becomes poor and has sold some of his possession, and his redeemer, a close relative, comes to redeem it, then he shall redeem what his brother sold. And when the man has no one to redeem it, but he himself becomes able to redeem it, then let him count the years since its sale and return the remainder to the man to whom he sold it, that he shall return to his possession. And if his hand has not found enough to give it back to him, then what was sold shall remain in the hands of him who bought it until the year of Yovel, and it shall be released in the Yovel, and he shall return to his possession. Now jump down to verse 35. And when your brother becomes poor, and his hand has failed with you, then you shall strengthen him, and he shall live with you. Like a stranger or a sojourner, take no interest from him or profit, but you shall fear your Elohim, and your brother shall live with you. Do not lend him your silver on interest, and do not lend him your food for profit. I am Yehovah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim to give you the land of Canaan, to be your Elohim. And when your brother who dwells by you becomes poor and sells himself to you, do not make him serve as a slave, but as a hired servant. As a settler he is with you and serves you until the year of Yovel. And then he shall leave you, and he and his children with him, and shall return to his own clan, even return to the possession of his fathers. For they are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Mitzrayim. They are not sold as slaves. Now jump down to verse 47. Now when a sojourner or settler with you becomes rich, and your brother with him becomes poor, and sells himself to the settler or sojourner with you, or to a member of the sojourner's clan after he has been sold, there is a right of redemption to him. One of his brothers does redeem him, or his uncle's son does redeem him, or anyone who is a close relative to him in his clan does redeem him. Or if he is able, then he shall redeem himself, and he shall reckon with him who bought him the price of release, shall be according to the number of years, from the year that he was sold to him until the year of Yovel, as the days of a hired servant it is with him. If there are yet many years, according to them he repays the price of his redemption from the silver of his purchase. And if few years are left until the year of Yovel, then he shall reckon with him, and according to his years he repays him the price of his redemption. He is with him as a yearly hired servant, and he does not rule with harshness over him before your eyes. And if he is not redeemed in the years, then he shall be released in the year of Yovel, he and his children with him. Because the children of Israel are servants to me. They are my servants whom I brought out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. Now, I believe that this is talking about brother in both the literal genetic sense, but also in the larger communal sense. He's talking about the brothers within the community of Israel. So within the specific tribe, if you were a son of Judah, your brother who also was a son of Judah, but also being of the tribe of Judah, your brother who was a Levite, your brother who was of Asher, Dan, and so on and so forth. And so for us, then, it has those same implications, both brother in literal genetic sense, but also in the communal sense. We see 3 times here he talks about poor, and the word poor is mentioned. It's the Hebrew word mulk, and it means to be low or depressed or grow poor. What I want to stress today is that the Father is greatly concerned with how we treat and care for the brethren. These verses are specific to brother, and I believe it's specific that way because if the brothers are caring for the brothers, then the rest get cared for as well. For example, if I am in need and a brother comes and helps me, it doesn't just help me, it helps my wife, it helps my children, it helps, we don't have any pets, but if we did, and so on and so forth. So it's saying brother is not excluding the sister, it's not excluding the children, it's including them under the umbrella of the headship of brother. Just to make that clear. Verse 35, and when your brother becomes poor and his hand has failed with you, then you shall strengthen him. That phrase, hand has failed with you, that is one Hebrew word. It is the word mot. And it means to totter, to shake, or to slip. In other words, if your brother begins to stumble, trip, or even fall, if your brother's foundation begins to shake, if your brother begins to lose heart, if a couple weeks go by and your brother isn't in community and you don't see them fellowshipping, if you find out your brother is sick, if you find out your brother is in need, if you find out your brother is wavering in his belief, whatever the case may be, you are called to strengthen your brother. Yeshua looked in the eyes of Peter, and he says, Peter, after you have been restored, I want you to gather your brothers and strengthen your brothers. I believe we're only able to go as far as we strengthen each other. We used to say we're only as strong as the weakest link, and you can only go as fast as the slowest runner and all those things, but I believe it's something more than that. It is, we are only able to accomplish as much as we are willing to unite as a community and strengthen each other. That word strengthen is the word chazak. It means to strengthen, it means to prevail, it means to harden, it means to be strong or become strong. It means to be courageous, to be firm, to grow firm, or to be resolute. Now, in that language, I hear something, as I was starting to say, when we think poor, the first thing we go to is lack of finances. But when I hear chazak and I hear the phrases that it's talking about of what strength looks like, to me, it's that word poor means way beyond just a financial situation. To me, it's spiritual poorness. It's wavering in hope. It's wavering in faith. It's a brother got caught by the difficulty of life and needs some help before he drowns. And you are to go and to strengthen him. Turn with me to the book of Isaiah, chapter 35. That those words of Yeshua to Peter are just resonating in my mind this morning. I believe it was a spiritual word because it's not in my notes. The Father just brought it to my mind. And thinking of after you have been restored. So there's a timing issue here. And there's a positioning of ourselves to be prepared to even be able to help a brother that I think becomes very important. All right, 35 verse 3. It says strengthener or hazak, the weak hands, and make firm the weak knees. Say to those with anxious heart, be strong, do not fear. See, your Elohim comes with vengeance, with the recompense of Elohim. He is coming to save you. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf be opened. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the dumb sing, because waters shall burst forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. That's an amazing word. Strengthen the weak hands and make firm the weak knees. Say to those with anxious heart, be strong, do not fear. A lot of times we hear an issue's going on with a brother or with a sister or another member of the community, and and this isn't a knock on prayer ministries, because the prayer ministry is an important aspect. But if all we do is pray, we're not meeting what the Father says to do in fullness. He says to strengthen the weak hands, make firm the weak knees, say to those with an anxious heart. So in other words, you find out somebody is anxious about a situation in their life, you got to go face to face with them and say. I'm saying the phone call isn't enough. The text, the Marco Polo, the Facebook post, the email, any of those things, they're not enough. It needs to be that face-to-face, because sometimes what a brother really needs is to see in your eyes strength, and they can grab hold of that same strength. Sometimes a brother needs to be carried. Sometimes they got a wounded leg and they need to lean on you just a little bit longer till there's stability back in their legs. And too often, we're allowing our brothers to walk alone. And it's easier for, that's how a lion works. A lion picks off the isolated one. The one that's going a little bit slower, that got left behind because everybody ran ahead. The one that has the limp, the one that has a little bit of weakness, that's the one that the lion preys on. But when the community surrounds that one, the lion can't get to them. Back in our Torah portion, it says to strengthen him, and he shall live with you. Now that's a strong word. That defies most of American Christian culture. Right? We like to help at a distance. We don't like opening our house up to somebody. Oh man, how long are they going to stay? How long are they going to be in need? I mean, would you just get over it already? And all those things. But I believe there's an intimacy that is spoken of here that the Father requires of us in community, but also that there's a strength that only can come in that measure of intimacy. We didn't do the announcements. We're having a barbecue. It's next Monday. It's a week from, 9 days from today. And it's at my house. And in all fairness, my wife is not thrilled about it. But I told her we're doing it anyway. Why? Because it creates a different level of intimacy in the community than just what we have if all we do is come here in this building and we meet on Shabbat, and then we don't see everybody for another week till the next Shabbat and the next Shabbat and the next Shabbat. So there has to be some shifting, because that creates strength. And it's of no surprise that the ones that waver the most are the ones we see the least, because they're the ones that need to be strengthened. And you need to go find them. You need to invite them over. You don't need to tell them, hey, brother, you should get back to Shabbat service. No, you say, hey, brother, why don't you come over for a burger? Hey, let's go to Five Guys, if you can afford Five Guys anymore. Or listen, why don't we just sit by the water and look at the water, or something that's free or cheap? But the point is, it's that communal, intimate relationship that is going to strengthen a brother who is wavering. Not you calling him and saying, get your butt back to church. Without the intimacy of relationship, those words fall on deaf ears. He shall live with you like a stranger or a sojourner. Now, I don't believe that means in the sense that you're supposed to treat him as if he's foreign to you, but I believe it means the Father's saying it's a temporary situation. And the question is, how long then? We all want to know how long. How long I got to put him in my house, Dad? As long as it takes to strengthen the hands and the knees. Verse 36, take no interest from him or profit. But you shall fear your Elohim, and your brother shall live with you. Do not lend him your silver on interest, and do not lend him your food for profit. This isn't a money-making proposition for you. If you are seeking repayment from a brother, then you are forfeiting the blessing Yehovah has for you. And the second thing I want to say about this is don't dig his hole deeper by charging him interest. Let's go to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 23. And it will give us a little more clarity. Deuteronomy 23, verse 19. Do not lend at interest to your brother, interest of silver, interest of food, or interest of whatever is lent at interest. To a foreigner you lend at interest, but to your brother you do not lend at interest. Why? So that Yehovah your Elohim might bless you in all that you put your hand to in the land which you are entering to possess. So just in case we thought he was saying don't lend at interest when our brother's poor, we have some clarification here. And just in case we thought he was only talking about money, he says anything that would be lent at interest, you are not to treat your brother that way. In other words, the Father, in all of this set-apartness that we've been talking about, there is a way that you are supposed to treat a brother that shows you and him in relationship that he is set apart from everyone else and shows the world that he is set apart. If someone, Joe Schmo from somewhere in Timbuktu, comes and wants to borrow from me, according to Torah, I can charge him interest. But I am not to charge a brother interest. And he says, so that the blessing of the Lord may come upon you. In other words, if you charge interest to your brother when he borrows from you, the blessing is not coming. You took the blessing for yourself in interest, rather than letting the Lord reward you for doing good to a brother. Then 39, back in our Torah portion, so Leviticus 25:39. And when your brother who dwells with you becomes poor and sells himself to you, do not make him serve as a slave, but as a hired servant. As a settler he is with you and serves you until the year of Yovel. Give the man a job. A brother is never to be a slave. He should always be paid for work done. You know, that was one of the things that I saw growing up in this church that I thought was so beautiful. Anytime someone was in need, Pastor Don would give him a job here. Something to do, and you had to do some work and you would get paid. No one's to get paid for nothing. But there was always an opportunity to come and do something and be paid for your work. No one should have to work for free. And something else should be said here too. Quit trying to get a better deal by using a brother. If anything, our desire should be to pay him more because he is a brother. Rather than trying to nickel and dime our brother. I mean, think about that. You're taking food off your brother's table to see that you get a better deal. The Bible says that a workman is worthy of his hire. So if you're getting solar You should be willing to use Joe because he's in that industry, even if it costs you a little bit more than some other guy that you have no idea who he is. You got a mold issue and you need some help with that. You can have Frank come in and inspect it. He may want to do it for free, but you shouldn't expect it for free. That's not how we should treat the brother. It's nice to get a good deal. But if that's our expectation and that's the reason why we're trying to use a brother, then we're missing some of what the Father is saying to us. Let's go to the book of John, chapter 13. I believe that we should be doing as much inside the community as possible. Our money should get used in the community first. If we don't have somebody in the community, then let's go outside the community and see that it's done. You know, I had somebody asked me yesterday about an electrician. Do I know an electrician? I said, well, here's two that I know of. Kenny's nephew is an electrician, and Donnie is an electrician. Do you know a carpenter? Do we have one in the community? Do you know somebody who can fix a car? We have people inside the community. If you're asking me because you wanted someone to come fix it or look at it for you for free, then don't ask me if we have somebody in the community, because I'm not going to be happy if I find out you went to ask them so you could get it for free. It's one thing if you're in a tight spot and you can't afford to. It's another thing if you're just unwilling to pay what's necessary. John chapter 13, verse 34 says this, "A renewed command I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another." Now, most translations say a new commandment I give to you. I want to talk about this a little bit. So the question then, is it renewed or is it new? The Hebrew word, right, when we see the new covenant, Brit Hadashah, means either new or renewed. And it's context that determines whether it means new or renewed. Because to renew something means to do what? Make it new again. But it's still new. So the question we have to ask ourselves is then, is this a new command or is it a pre-existing command? I think based on our Torah portion, it's a pre-existing commandment that you are to love your brother. And plenty of other Torah examples in there. That you are to love your brother, and that is to distinguish you from the outside, right? Don't charge your brother interest, but a foreigner you're allowed. So based on a good reading of Torah, this is nothing new. If not new, then why would it have to be renewed? The question is, shouldn't they have already known? And it's interesting when you read the Gospels, even in Yeshua's group of disciples, you begin to hear what was going on in Israel all around. Remember, they're walking down the road and they're having the conversation about who's the greatest, who should sit in the best seat. John's mom comes and asks if her sons can sit next to him on his right and on his left, right? All this hierarchy and pitting for position and all of this kind of stuff going on. Certain aspects of Torah, just like today, had been buried underneath tradition, doctrines of men, and cultural norms of the times. Yeshua is in the house of a Pharisee, and he says, when you get invited to a party, don't take the best seat. He says, go sit by the door. Go sit by the bathroom. No one wants to sit by the bathroom. Go sit by the bathroom and wait for them to call you up higher, rather than take a seat that you don't deserve and get kicked out of that seat. He's dealing with this cultural reality that was going on there, and in Pharisaic tradition, in the Sadducees, and in the teaching, and growing up under what should have been Torah, but was traditions of men. It was all this hierarchy of who knew more, who could teach better, who could get a better position, and who could leverage somebody to get position. And it's the same today. It's absolutely the same today. Right? And we say things when, we're working in the world, we say things like the squeaky wheel gets the oil and all those different things, and the being up the boss's butt and all of those different things, and we get, because we're all trying to pit for that stuff. But inside the brotherhood, that should not exist. And so there had to be this shifting of this cultural norm and what seemed to be appropriate at the time. It's interesting to me that in reading the Gospels, John the Baptist is the only one who speaks out against Herod for taking his brother's wife. None of the other Pharisees do we hear, none of the Sadducees or scribes or anyone else do we hear vocalize to Herod, you shouldn't have done that, to the point that it cost John the Baptist his life. But we should have people in the community, even if they get shunned, be willing to stand up and say, hey, that's not how you treat your brother. You don't do that stuff to your brother. This is how you treat your brother. And here's what's interesting, too. When we look at the hierarchy of how these things were happening at the time of our Master on the earth, and the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the high priest and all of that stuff, they were giving up their brother for Rome. They were literally aligning with Rome and aligning with the world to get position over caring for their brother. As all of our Master's commandments were, this is just another calling back to the Torah with a word and a deed. Right? He doesn't just tell them love each other. But what does he do first? He washes their feet. And if you remember the beginning of this story in John chapter 13, Jesus takes off his garment, he guards himself with a towel, and he grabs the basin of water. He takes the position of a servant. The lowest of lowest jobs was to wash someone's feet. And he comes and gets ready to wash Peter's feet, and Peter says, absolutely not. He says, you're above me, you're not going to do this. And it's interesting because Jesus says, well, if you don't let me wash your feet, you have no part in me. And it's interesting, as a lot of times we teach that and about the washing and the cleansing of Jesus, and it allows us in the community. But as we look at how Jesus is expressing love, we can understand then this reciprocal servanthood, and if that's not happening, we're actually not in him. We're actually not part of him. We're part of a world system where we're trying to get something from somebody else that we're not necessarily willing to give in return. Psalm 133 verse 1 says this: how good and how pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. Now, it's not unity just for the sake of unity, but nonetheless it is unity. And so there's got to be some things that change within the body, because there's just way too much infighting in the body. Things over doctrine and scripture and whatnot. And in my, I guess I would say, short life on the earth, I have yet to see a brother won over in doctrine through argument. I've never seen someone won to Christ because you could argue better than them. I have never seen anyone shift their theological position because you spoke better than them and were able to bury them in your theological position. Usually they just leave offended, hurt, and don't want to come back. And there's so many of them right now, right? How to even if we get past whether you keep Torah or you don't keep Torah, You get past that, and we're in the Torah group, right? Now there's the calendar, there's how to pronounce the name, there's head coverings, should women teach, all of these different doctrinal beliefs that I do believe this talks on. But if we're going to use them as leverage in how we treat a brother, then we're going to break the unity that the Father wants us to have. And we're going to miss the love that could potentially join us. Let's go to 1 John chapter 2. And so before we leave the unity thing, here's what I want to stress about it. If we're talking about the difference between following the Bible or following the world, then we draw the line in the sand. And that's not where we're supposed to be unified. But if we're talking about a difference of understanding or interpretation of what this actually says, when it says, do this, don't do this. For example, we talked, was it last week? Yeah, I think it was last week. We were talking about the word chodesh, right, which is normally translated as new moon. I'm not breaking unity with you because you have a different understanding of the word chodesh. Or if you think Passover was supposed to be on April 5th and I think it was supposed to be on April 15th, I'm not breaking unity with you. It's going to be hard because we may not celebrate Passover at the same time. Or first fruits. I think first fruits, that's another one that's really easily arguable for a lot of different positions. So if you want to celebrate first fruits at a different time because you have a different understanding, I'm not breaking communion and fellowship with you over that. But if you're going to tell me we don't have to keep the feasts, now you're moving into the world. If you want to invite me over to your house for Easter dinner, we're going to have issues because now we're getting into paganism and I just can't go there because this tells me not to. But if we're in community and you invite me over to your house, I'm not going to ask you what's in the food because this book tells me not to. And it's funny because I don't know how many times since we've been doing this, it's weird to even say this Torah stuff. I hate to make it light of it. But how many times I've heard downstairs when there were things like different sausages or things made, people would say, is there pork in that? Is there pork in that? Why are you asking that question? When, first of all, this book says don't eat pork, but it also is the same book that says when you go to a brother's house and they give you food, don't ask what's in it, just eat it. Those are the kind of things that can cause these divisions. All right, 1 John chapter 2, starting in verse 8. Again, I write you a fresh command, which is true in him and in you, because the darkness is passing away and the true light now shines. The one who says he is in the light and hates his brother is in the darkness until now. The one who loves his brother stays in the light, and there is no stumbling block in him. But the one who hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness, and does not know where he is going, because the darkness has blinded his eyes. I'm starting to feel the reason why the Father keeps putting some of these messages out for me to hear and for us to hear as a community is tied to how many restoration dreams I keep having. I had another one. I think I told Joe about it. I had another one last week. It's almost once a month now I have restoration dreams of people who have been here before or people who I have relationship with that the Father is restoring. And we have to be careful of these kind of things. The one who says he is in the light and hates his brother is in the darkness until now. Well, what does hate mean? You ever think about that? Like, I have this process of, well, what do you actually mean when you say hate? And I just want to let that sit there because I want you to ponder that. I don't want to be the one that tells you what hating your brother is. I want you to be seeking in your heart, have I? Have I? And if you seek in your heart, the Holy Spirit's will just let you know where that root or that seed actually is. Jump over to chapter 3, verse 14. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brothers. The one not loving his brother stays in death. Now, to me, that is a phrase talking about staying in your flesh. The one who loves his brother has literally died. Because, and we'll get to this, but this word that you see, love, that we're talking about here, it's agapeo. It's literally the verb form of agape. So it's that love functioning in a deed. Let's keep reading. Everyone hating his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has everlasting life staying in him. By this we know we have known love because he laid down his life for us. We ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. But whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his tender affections from him, how does the love of Elohim stay in him? My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Now go to 2 John, verse 5 and verse 6. And now I ask you, Curia, not as though I wrote a fresh command to you, but that which we have had from the beginning, that we love one another. And this is the love, that we walk according to his commands. This is the command, that as you have heard from the beginning, you should walk in it. So this word agapeo is a verb. It's used to describe our master's love. It's a sacrificial love. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down his life for his friend. Now, Yeshua literally laid down his life, died. I believe when we read some of this language and he's talking about sacrificing your life for your brother as an aspect of love, means to give up some of the things you're trying to accomplish to see that your brother gets it done. You know, in the world, I see so much going on of people trying to keep all their stuff in order and stuff neat and make sure their lawn's mowed and make sure their car's washed and make sure this is done and that is done. But if you're driving around a dirty car and your grass is knee high, but your brother is not in need, you've done well according to the word. Because it's not at all about how clean your car is or how short your grass is mowed that distinguishes you as a member or a brother of our Messiah. It's how you're treating the brother and caring for them. It's not, did you get your garden planted? It's, did you help your brother plant their garden? Sort of, and I'll tell you why in a minute. We love first by help. Let's go to Luke 14. Luke 14, starting in verse 1. And it came to be, as he went into the house of one of the rulers of the Pharisees to eat bread on Shabbat, that they were watching him closely. And see, there was a certain man before him suffering from dropsy. And Yeshua, responding, spoke to those learned in the Torah and the Pharisees, saying, Is it right to heal on the Sabbath?" But they were silent. So taking hold of him, he healed him and let him go. And to them he said, "Which of you, having a donkey or an ox that has fallen into a pit, shall not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day?" And they were unable to answer him regarding these matters. Now, I believe this parable becomes imperative to us because it helps us understand a little bit more about Shabbat and what is required of us. Now, Shabbat requires that we rest, and it requires that we rest from our normal everyday things. I push it even further in my own life, and this is where I'm at a constant battle with my flesh. Shabbat, when I read the interpretation of Shabbat, means I have to remove anything that is a distraction from relational here and fellowship with the brethren. So that, for me, a lot of times becomes my phone. And I have to put my phone, put my phone off to the side because it's so easy to just begin scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And hours go by and I didn't spend a moment with him and I completely forgot about the brethren. So there's those things too that resonate with me about Shabbat that become a difficulty that I have to battle with all the time. But what I want to stress here, so that rest from work, right? If we leave today and Brother Jim's car doesn't start in the parking lot, I would expect that Mr. Myers would be the first one to help him. Maybe my dad. I don't know who else is, Earl. But mechanically inclined people. Adam works as a mechanic. But I would expect, because love, an act of love is required on Shabbat, which includes healing, which includes pulling a donkey out of the ditch. If you call me on Shabbat and a tree's on the roof of your house, I'm coming to your house with my chainsaw on Shabbat to help you get it off. Because that's what you are required to do as loving a brother. And so on and so forth. Now, we should not position to exploit people that way. And we shouldn't be positioning ourselves to intentionally break Shabbat. That's why I love how in Judaism they have preparation day. Like you should be getting prepared for Shabbat. You don't accidentally stumble into Shabbat and you do it well. If you trip into Shabbat, you're going to fall on your face in Shabbat. Because you're going to have something out of order and something not prepared and something not ready. And I'm telling you, it's a world of trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out how to make sure the biggest one in our house, food. I'm trying to make sure we got enough food to eat that by the time Shabbat comes to an end, we're not all ticked off because we didn't eat enough. Because that's not what Shabbat is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a joy and it's supposed to be pleasing. So are we doing enough on preparation day to get there? Little Shabbat sidebar. Galatians 6 verse 2. We're talking about love by help. Bear one another's burdens and so complete the Torah of Messiah. His Torah is not any different than the Father's. So we're supposed to carry one another's burdens. Which requires then that we know what one another's burdens are. There's that intimacy again. Which means two pieces of relationship are required there. I've got to be going to you and asking, brother, what's weighing on you so heavy? And you can't go, well, I'm all right. If you say, I'm all right, I'm going to let you fall under the weight of that burden. So then then you can admit, brother, I need help. And then I can help you. and so on and so forth. But there has to be that mutual intimacy and openness in relationship where I'm intimate enough with you that I could just from here, I should be able to see that something's going on with you, and I shouldn't have to go, Holy Spirit, please give me discernment to know if my brother's overburdened. I should know that in community. I should know about your life enough like that, and vice versa. That's how community functions. That's how this love of the brother works. Exodus 23:5, when you see the donkey of him who hates you, praise the Lord, lying under its burden, you shall refrain from leaving it to him. You shall certainly help him. So even if you're at odds with a brother, even if he did something that ticks you off, you are still supposed to help him carry that burden. Even if they come to you for advice, and they say, should I do this or should I do that? Or I don't know what to do here. And you say, well, here's your options. If you go this way, it's probably going to work out a little better for you. If you go this way, it's going to put more burden on your life. You know 9 times out of 10, they're going the burden direction. So we got to stop getting offended about people not taking the right choice when we offer them what it looks like possibilities in their life, and go and help pick them up. Say, all right, brother, you took the wrong road. Let me walk you back to the right road. Let's just make a U-turn here, brother. Let's start this thing over. Love by help. Second, love by sacrifice. John 15. And this word is sitting heavy in me because, and I know for some of you, you're probably in the same place I am. I'm really feeling the grind of prepping, of getting my homestead ready, of making sure there's enough food in my house, of making sure that my family doesn't go without. But if any of that causes me to be blind of the need of my father, or of my brother, I've missed what the Father has wanted me to do. Matthew 6, right? Don't worry about what you have to eat or what you have to wear. That doesn't mean don't get prepared. That means if you allow yourself to view what you do or don't have as a way that causes you to be anxious and not fulfill your responsibility in the kingdom, you've missed what the Father told you to do. John 15, verse 12. This is my command. John 15, verse 12. This is my command, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, than one should lay down his life for his friends. Let's get to the book of Galatians, chapter 5. Galatians 5, starting in 13. For you, brothers, have been called to freedom. Only do not use freedom as an occasion for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the entire Torah is completed in one word, in this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, you fulfill the Torah by loving your neighbor. And you have to go into the Torah to know what loving your neighbor means. It means you don't charge them interest. You know how many Christian brothers I know about that have charged Christian brothers interest or so on and so forth? You didn't love your brother when you did that. You didn't love your neighbor when you did that. When they were in need and you said you were too busy, you didn't love your brother. Galatians 6, verse 10, so then, as we have occasion, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of the belief. So there has, to me, that's a reprioritization. When it says especially, you have this responsibility to be good to people. But he stresses especially to those in community. There's a prioritization of the brother over the world, and we need some recalibration at times. Love by sacrifice inherently means setting aside your wants to fulfill the need of another. Which means then you have to know the difference between a want and a need. My wife and I are in a situation of discussing some financial matters and different things that we're going to do. I am happy to honor the Father by reporting to you that we are 100% debt-free as of Friday, and that is an absolute blessing that only came at the hand of the Father. So we're talking about, having some discussions about some financial things, and we were having this conversation, this want-need conversation, which my wife, to give her credit, is very amazingly attuned to the difference between a want and a need. And I'm not as in tune to that as she is, although she is helping me be more in tune to that. So one of the things that, we want to do is put an addition on our house. Technically, we don't have enough, especially with this new little bun in the oven, enough bedrooms for everyone in our house to have a bedroom. Probably most of you are in the room are like, so what? I mean, I grew up in the same situation. I shared a bedroom with two brothers till I got kicked out of my parents' house, basically. But it's easy for my mind to go, okay, well, we need more rooms. We need. But the truth is, it's not a need. It's a want. And that want can't get in the way of defying this. I mean, I'm strong in my resolve that I'm never going to fulfill a want to be in debt. I don't think the Bible directly is against debt, but I think and I mean that it's a commandment not to be in debt, but I can prove through Torah and Scripture that to be in debt is to defy the Father. So though it doesn't say it directly, when it says that the borrower is slave to the lender, you're now serving two masters. So by that course of doctrine, to be in debt would be to violate the Torah and to violate what you have in covenant with him. So I'm a big proponent of get out of debt as fast as you can and get out of it. And don't get back in it. Don't get out of it just to get back in it. It takes a lot of work to get out of it. And if you're not in it, don't ever get in it. Paul said, "Oh, no man, nothing but to do what? Love him." So there's nothing in my life that's going to position me to do that again. I would rather live in a cardboard box than owe anyone anything. I told my wife I picked up lumber for our garden the other day, and I always said I was debt-free. I went to the sawmill to pay for the lumber, and I didn't have enough cash in my pocket. He said, when you come back next time, just give it to me. I know you're good. That's eating me alive that I owe him this little tiny amount of money. I mean, we literally paid $100,000 off on a mortgage, and I owe this guy just a little bit of money. And it's eating me alive because I know I owe somebody something. I don't want to owe anyone anything except to love them. Especially in this economy. Especially. There's a reason why the Father says the things he says. And if I love you, then you don't owe me anything either. And so when love is functioning in community, there's freedom. No one becomes anyone's slave. No one is a borrower that it becomes slave to a lender because there's just free giving. So you have to know the difference between a want and a need, because if all you do is chase, most of the time we're chasing want, and want just puts us in a position where we can't even help other people with their needs. Does that make sense? When we're following our own wants, it causes us to miss opportunities to fulfill someone else's need. To me, we're just too busy. We are just way, way, way too busy. I'll give you an example of my own life yesterday. We're putting in another garden, the lumber I just picked up. And I had a short window yesterday after working here in the morning, and I try to get here very early, by the way, because when I'm here early, I don't get interrupted or distracted, and I can just focus on the Lord. So I was here at 7:30 yesterday morning. I was here for a few hours, and then I went to help my dad because he's working on a project, and he's pulling his hair out with that. And I was like, man, I want to get back to working on my garden, but I know I need to help him. So I went and I helped him for a little while, and I felt so relieved that I was able to help him to a point that he didn't need me, and I was like so quick to get out of there. And then I called him later that night, and he was just at his wit's end trying to figure it out, and I felt so bad. I felt bad that I didn't just stick around, even though there was nothing I could do. And this is something that, my wife and I have conversations about. Sometimes the help I need is just to stay there and don't do anything, just be there. Because something's going to come up in the moment. And just waiting in that 5 minutes, I don't have to go find you for help then. So there was that. And then I got home. I was like, okay, I've got 2 hours to get some boards up. I could get a lot of boards up. I commissioned some help. And you guys want a workforce? Go to my parents' house and get those girls to come work with you. All of them, Aria, Lizzie, Rosie, they work their butts off. I took AJ a week ago, and just to brag on them, I took AJ a week ago to get some concrete block that I had given to me for free. That boy helped me carry 198 concrete blocks. Those kids work hard, but you have to understand this generation. They're not like our generations. You have to ask them. And if you get offended over the fact that you have to ask them, that's shame on you. Eventually, they will learn to just be servants. It's okay for them to have to be asked right now. So they came to work and help me, and I felt so bad because they came, and I had recently told my Aunt Valerie, if you need some plants, I got a lot of leftover plants. So Val came down for some plants. And then I took her on the tour of the property and, all the things that I've been doing because I haven't seen her in a little while. Val left. I think I turned around to start cutting a board, and then Josie pulled in because I told Josie I have some stuff for her salads that she makes. Josie came, then 2 other people came. My sister-in-law came, and then my sister came, and by then I'm like, man, I said to my wife, all these people came and I got nothing done. Because my focus was wrong. My focus is on getting done what I wanted rather than having that communal moment with all those people for things that they needed. And I got to see my sister-in-law, Michelle, who I hardly ever see, and do something good for her in a time where she's having a really difficult thing in her life going on. But I was just wanting to get it over with quick because I was on my want. And it's so easy to be that way. And so just understand, if you ever feel like I'm here and it's coming this way, you got to know it's coming this way first. And I get it a lot from him. So the next thing, we talked about love by help, love by sacrifice, love by correction. Now here's the thing I want to say here. You can't love your brother by correction without intimacy of relationship. If all your children know from you is your hard hand, they're going to see you as a tyrant, and they're going to run away from you at every chance they get. Matthew chapter 18. I don't know about y'all, but it's hot in here. Oh, I have a fan. Hey, don't trip. Is that the fan one? I don't know. I never remember which one is. Hey, there it is. Hold the papers. Matthew 18, verse 15. And if your brother sins against you, go and convict him between you and him alone. Right? So there's a process by which the Father wants us to use to bring correction to a brother. Now, I want to put the disclaimer in here of the plank and the speck, too. We have all of this stuff to filter our desire to want to correct our brother. But nonetheless, we are called to bring correction one to another. And if your brother sins against you, go and convict him between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not hear you, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word might be established. And if he refuses to hear them, say it to the assembly. And if he refuses even to hear the assembly, let him be to you like the nations and a tax collector. Now let's jump Galatians chapter 6. Verse 1. And here's some of that filter that we need. Brothers, if a man is overtaken in some trespass, you, the spiritual ones. That almost sounds like a little jab, right? Set such a one straight in a spirit of meekness, looking at yourself, lest you be tried too. So there's protocol in bringing correction to a brother and helping them get through this process of restoration. Let's go to the book of James, chapter 5. Verse 19 and 20. The last words in this writing of James. Brothers, if anyone among you goes astray from the truth, and someone turns him back, let him know that he who turns a sinner from the straying of his way shall save a life from death and cover a great number of sins. See, there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. And in the right way, you have the potential to turn a brother back. Those personal, intimate, one-on-one conversations where you can just say, hey, brother, let me talk to you about this for a moment, or let me show you something that I'm seeing. Not, brother, let me show you how I'm right. It's fun to be right. We like being right. There's nothing wrong with liking being right. There's something wrong with your enjoyment of being right, affecting and inflicting relationships you have with other people. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. Second Thessalonians 3, verse 15. Let's read 14 for context. 13. And you, brothers, do not grow weary in doing good. Now, what's interesting about this, in the first letter that Paul writes to the church of Thessalonica, he says, you have no need that I talk to you concerning brotherly love, because you've already figured it out from God, basically is what it says. There's the paraphrase. He gets to the second letter, and towards the end, he says, brothers, don't grow weary in doing good. In other words, there's been some time of them functioning in this love thing, and it has the potential over time to begin to wear on you, because the closer you get to people, the less you tend to like them. And the more you have to deal with your flesh to be able to love them. So as time is going on, you're going to find, man, there's something about Earl. He's awesome, but man, there's something that just gets up under here a little bit. I love you anyway. I have that with my wife. I don't want to spend more time with anyone in the world than I do with my wife, but there's some times where I go, yes, Father, I will love her. Because the intimacy of relationship begins to reveal all of our flaws, and I'm sure she has the same this way. At some point, you're going to get sick and tired of hearing my voice if you haven't already. But there's that intimacy and necessity of closeness. Why? Because it amplifies the love we have. If I go like this and say, yeah, I love you, rather than, I see your flaws and I love you. That's loving like the Father, because he sees all that we are, all that we did, all that we're doing, and he still sends his Son. So he says, do not grow weary in doing good, and if anyone does not obey our word in this letter, note that one, and do not keep company with him, so that he is put to shame. However, do not regard him as an enemy. This is a strong word, and I think it's a strong word for us. Because there are some people that are not obeying this word the way we think it should be obeyed. The way we view what should be done in here. That are brothers. And we are not to regard them as enemies. It says this, but to admonish him as a brother. That word admonish means to warn, exhort, admonish, reprove gently. You can't argue. It's got to be gentle, and to caution. You've got to tell them. But you got to do it in a spirit of meekness. You've got to do it in gentleness. Don't leave it up to someone else or hope they get it on their own. The Father will do the work if we don't do it. Right? He says that very clearly in Ezekiel. Because the shepherds didn't do their job, I'm going to come and shepherd them myself, he says. But that's not the way it was supposed to be. We have a responsibility. You've got to tell them. You've got to warn them. It's a warning, it says. That's what to admonish somebody is to warn them. There is a whole church being led blindly to believe things that are just not true. And it is not loving the brother to keep it to ourselves. Didn't we just read that? When you have your house full of stuff and you have all this stuff and you see your brother in need and you don't give them any of it. When you have understanding of the word, when the Father has revealed truth to you and you zip your lip when your brother is dying in his lack of understanding, that sin is on you. You have to tell them. That doesn't mean you beat them. It doesn't mean you argue with them. Brother, let me show you what I believe is an understanding of the word. And then you can do with it what you want. But let me show you, please. A few more. Love, love, and more love. Romans chapter 12. Verse 9 and 10. Let love be without hypocrisy. Shrink from what is wicked, cling to what is good. In brotherly love, tenderly loving towards one another. In appreciation, giving preference to each other. 1 Corinthians 12, 26 and 27. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or if one member is esteemed, all the members rejoice with it. And you are a body of Messiah and members individually. I don't know where Kenny is right now, but when I heard the passing of Kenny's mother, and even prior to that, when I heard how sick she was, my heart was so intimately connected with him. And I believe that's why we had such a beautiful moment at her house. But just to be able, when one is suffering, we are all suffering. You have to understand that. And when one is rejoicing, we are all rejoicing. The world looks at it when one is rejoicing. Why did they get it? Why was it them and not me? No, when one is rejoicing, we're all rejoicing. When you have a breakthrough, I will rejoice with you. Am I grateful that we're debt-free? Yeah. But when I look at us debt-free, I don't look at it as me and my wife and my 5 soon-to-be, well, not soon, but sometime this year, 5 children. I don't look at it as us. I look at it as a victory in our community, because it opens the way for the community to grow differently. My focus can be different. My pastoral responsibility can be amplified because of that change in a member's situation. So when that happens with you, I can see how it affects the whole community, and we can rejoice together. And the like. When something difficult happens in your life, we should be able to be there with you. We should be able to empathize. There are things I may not ever be able to understand. I don't know. I don't know what it feels like. We've been so fortunate and so blessed that to this point we've never lost a child. I don't know what that feels like. I can only so much connect, but there are people that have recently gone through that, and my heart just aches, hurts, especially in this season where we've been fortunate not to have to suffer that. Those are the kind of things I'm saying. When that happens in the community, it should be affecting us all. We shouldn't be isolated from each other in either the good or the bad. You know, COVID, one of the advantages of it is it didn't pass anybody. Everybody had to touch it. We all got a taste, and a lot of times together. Philippians chapter 2. Starting in verse 1. If then there is any encouragement in Messiah, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of spirit, if any affection and compassion, make my joy complete by being of the same mind, having the same love, one in being and of purpose, doing none at all through selfishness or self-conceit, but in humility, considering others better than yourselves. Each one should look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. For let this mind be in you, which was also in Messiah. Now, I don't want to keep reading because I don't want to get into the next part, but each one should look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others. You are not to help your brother at the expense of yourself. In other words, you are not to help to the point of becoming a burden on the community. If you are giving to, and it causes your own house to suffer, you're giving beyond what you are supposed to do. If you are serving in the community and it's causing you to suffer in your relationship with the Father or beyond what you can navigate or what your family is able to handle, you're serving beyond your capacity and you need to make some shifting. There is the responsibility of each brother to secure his own first, but you better be careful to know the difference between a want and a need. How much food do you actually need, brother? How much money do you actually need in your savings account? How often do you actually have to work, brother? And all of those things. because it gets so easy to put self first. And I believe the Father tells us to put self first in the sense of making sure we have enough so that we don't become a burden when we're trying to help the other. Matthew 24:12 tells us that in the last days, because of the increase of lawlessness, the love of many will grow cold. So we need to get the love back by fulfilling the commandments of brother to brother. And we need to be pressing that out in the rest of the body, in the rest of the community, in the rest of the body of Messiah, that this brother-to-brother love, this brother-to-brother focus, this looking to the need of your brother before you're dealing with your own want, that has to come back. A renewed command I give you, that you love one another as he has loved you, that you also love one another. I'll close with one more scripture. In Hebrews 13, verse 1, it simply says this: let brotherly love continue. Father, first and foremost, Father, may we never lose our love for you. But secondly, Father, may we never lose our love for our brother. Help us, Father, not to only love in word, but to love in deed. Help us to be a people not attached to our own personal desires so much, Father, that they take the place of meeting the need of a brother. Continue to work in us an appropriate shifting of prioritization, Father. I thank you for this community, Father. And I thank you that you are knitting us together. I thank you, Father, also that you have many more who you desire to be in this community who are not to this point. May we lovingly welcome them and accept them as brothers. Cause us to love one another as you have loved us, Father. In the mighty name of Yeshua we pray. Amen.